Dear friends, by now I think you all know who I am, Erik Ader. I am the proud son of the man who is commemorated here. You can still see that he was commemorated here. The plaque is still here. I'm proud because my father managed, with the help of many others, to save the lives of 200 to 300 Jewish compatriots during the Holocaust, as is testified by Yad Vashem. He was betrayed, arrested, severely tortured to squeeze information out of him, which, by the way, failed completely, and finally executed on the 20th of November 1944. Had he not been betrayed, had he lived to implement his audacious plan to overrun the Dutch transit camp for Jews, the number of people saved could have been over 1,000. It's a bit silly, of course, to be proud of a man, someone else's courage and deeds. I didn't even know him, but I can't help it. What I'm not at all proud of is the location of this plaque. This plaque marks the spot, and we toured it extensively, where grateful survivors planted 1,100 trees in my father's name. Pine trees, to make the desert bloom, as those who donated them were led to believe. There was no desert here. There was a thriving Palestinian community, a community which was forcefully expelled. The trees planted in my father's name, a man who stood up to defend basic human rights, these trees were planted to cover an act of ethnic cleansing. We never had a chance to ask him what he would have made of all this, but I'm fairly certain, based on what he stood for, he would have been upset by this travesty of truth and justice. My mother came here to unveil this plaque on the 22nd of November 1967. She had the gift of believing and trusting people until proven otherwise. She was not aware of the scam that she was participating in. Pious words about afforestation were spoken by the JNF, so testifies a newspaper report that I later found. But what is bothering me as a Dutch citizen is the fact that the charge d'affaires of the Dutch embassy at the time was also present at this ceremony. He must have known what was going on. Diplomats are not all as daft as you might think. The Dutch embassy must have known what was going on, here and in all these other locations where the JNF was covering up and wiping out the traces of an earlier Palestinian existence. No doubt this was reported to the government back home, and no doubt this information was systematically ignored as unwelcome. It did not fit in with what the Dutch public opinion wanted to hear at the time. The public preferred to remain blissfully ignorant about the injustices done to the Palestinian people. This is going on to this very day. I am embarrassed by my country, which continues to give tax breaks to the JNF, which is, by its very deeds, a discriminating organization. It practiced its discriminatory behavior after the Nakba of 1948. It did so after the conquest of the West Bank. It continues to do so this very day by foresting lands which are expropriated from the Bedou in the Negev, and by funding settler organizations in the occupied territories. In short, the JNF stands to be accused of being complicit in ethnic cleansing, and I am ashamed to see my father's name tied to it. I'm ashamed of my country, which over the years has given Israel a blank check. All we did was accepting Israel's violations of international law, all the while mumbling toothless admonitions. We were Israel's useful fools, buying into a peace process that was systematically sabotaged by Israel while providing cover for creating facts on the ground. The moments when all this could have been averted, the international community failed to put adequate pressure on Israel. It failed to do so after the Camp David summit of 1978, mind you, the first one, 1978. It failed to do so after the murder of Rabin in 1995. It failed to do so at the time of the Arab League summit peace proposal of 2002, which was repeated in 2007. We are still failing. People who are entitled to Dutch social security and who are living in the West Bank are treated by my government as if they were living in Israel proper, in violation of international and of Dutch law. Taking you back to the memory of my father and knowing how he was tortured, it hurts. It hurts like hell. To know that to this very day, like yesterday and tomorrow, Palestinians were, are and will be tortured at the hands of Israelis. More often than not, totally arbitrarily, not seldom minors, more often than not because they just stood up for their rights and their dignity. Why are we commemorating? What is the use of commemorating the horrors of the past and honor its heroes if we fail to draw universal lessons from it? What is the use of commemoration if we look exclusively at the transgressions committed against us, while we fail to see what lessons they contain for our own behavior? The Dutch are not alone in their failings. Instead of discrediting Israel for all it has done, some countries in Europe and elsewhere are trying to discredit and outlaw the BDS movement. What is wrong with asking for sanctions on violations of international law? What is wrong with divesting from companies which benefit from a brutal occupation? What is wrong with boycotting people who in words and deeds advocate the oppression of another people? BDS was the non-violent way to undo apartheid in South Africa. Why would it all be why would it all be wrong here and now? It seems to be the only way left to stop Israel in its suicidal tracks. As the legendary bishop and Nobel laureate Desmond Tutu asked, if you see your friend being drunk, should you not take the keys off his car? South Africa abolished its dehumanizing apartheid system. It created a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to come to terms with the sins of the past. Instead of covering up its sins by means of the JNF, instead of denying its past, it would help if Israel finally stood up and acknowledged the sins it committed in its creation, expressed remorse in the best Jewish traditions, and would seek atonement by trying to undo the injustices done to the Palestinians. I hope to live and see a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Israel-Palestine. If so, I'll come and rejoice and plant another 1,100 trees in Israel. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Erik. It hurts like hell. Thank you.